You leverage the bioidentical stuff until you get stuck. And then you go with the kitchen sink approach to push you over the edge, get phenomenally strong to the point your blood work says F you, and then you come off and cruise out and maintain all of the gains. Okay, so but that's also because you're growing back into your previous muscle memory. We're not putting in new tissue. Right?
Exactly.
The new tissue is not there. You would have to bump up the dose to really get new tissue in.
This is the thing now. So what I probably find now is in probably the next 2-3 weeks, naturally I'll probably just hit my quote unquote natural plateau, somewhere around 98, 99 kilos, that if I want to get any bigger, I'm going to have to go to a higher androgen level to allow more muscle protein synthesis to occur, more leverage and nitrogen retention and all that sort of stuff. That I think we sort of underestimate, even when we're talking about dosages, going up too high too quick. Yes, that short and sweet blast, like Kurt said, is like a more controlled, shorter exposure to a high dose, but you could completely overestimate the dose that you chose for that run. And that's not necessarily a wrong thing, but it could be a wrong thing and that could generate side effects and health consequences. So it's difficult to say, that's the greater option over the other, the slow, steady approach of bioidentical stuff. But if I was to follow it in my own current case, I would probably, rather than knowing that, my days of like a short blast like that, it's probably not there anymore. If I was to choose my next step, if I reach that plateau in a couple of weeks, would probably go 250 tests, and maybe, depending on appetite, I might add in a small dose of insulin at one meal on top of the GH. Would I push maybe the GH from 4 I use on the training days up to 6 or 8? There's those small little leverages that could I then continue that for a longer period of time over an anabolic setup? It probably comes back to what we all talk about as blood work. So whatever strategy I choose, whether it's that long and slow bioidentical or short and sweet anabolic androgenic steroids stack, your blood work's still going to tell you at like week 8 whether you're in danger or not, or what something has changed or not, whether it's a responsible decision to continue. Both scenarios still require the same decision matrix, 8 to 10 weeks into whatever you've chosen to do, and either you pay attention to what the blood work is saying or you ignore and just continue on.
Yeah, I'm risk averse to any blood work changes. Like, let's see what I can do. So what do you guys think about like a hybrid approach, where you leverage the bioidentical hormones until you reach a certain point, like let's say a plateau in dose or progress, but then it also means that you're primed, right? Your food intake is high, your metabolism is high, your training intensity and your volume and all that stuff is like perfectly adapted for, let's say, 1.5 grams of testosterone. And then you throw in an 8-week do or die crazy cycle, because instead of slowly building up to that with a crazy cycle with, test EQ, trend, etc., you kind of leverage the bioidentical hormones to the point you get stuck. Your blood work parameters are a little bit skewed, but there's room for abuse, so to say, to push you over that edge and go from 260 to 280. So you go up to 1.5 grams, for example. With 6, I use growth hormone, some insulin, and some ancillaries to keep your blood pressure in range and all the health ancillaries needed to stay as healthy as possible. And then you do your blood work and you're like, now I'm going to throw in another gram of Primo and maybe 150 milligrams Tren and 50 milligrams Anadrol pre-workout 4 times a week, 200 milligrams total. So you go from 1.5 grams to 2.5 grams or 2.7, increase the growth hormone, ride it out for 8 to 10 weeks, make phenomenal gains, and then cruise. Because I think there's something to say for that as well, right? You leverage the bioidentical stuff until you get stuck, and then you go with the kitchen sink approach to push you over the edge, put some new tissue on, get phenomenally strong to the point your blood work says fuck you, and then you come off and cruise out and maintain all of the gains on bioidentical stuff, allowing you to get healthy again. What do you guys think?
I agree. I think more guys should leverage test for a long time before they even started adding compounds in. I think where the modern thing with the guys using very little amounts of test, then adding primo immediately in before they're even at a clinical dose of testosterone. I think that came from Derek, but I don't think they were understanding what Derek was talking about. Because if you actually listen to what he was saying leverage test as high as you can go before you get side effects. He wasn't saying do 140 test and then add primo. He never
it's a new
once said
thing
that.
because people are scared of tests because they're feminists.
Whatever it may be, but
I want to do low test and high testosterone. What are you?
Why,
bro?
Yeah,
that's the women approach. What are you doing?
And you'll get most guys would get more out of leveraging tests than they would out of unless you're competing and you're getting on stage. Test will do 99% of the stuff all the other drugs are going to do.
Yeah, and if the only downside is that it might increase epidermal growth factor and make your skin a little bit thicker, but you can mitigate that by getting your body fat levels down. Okay, the skin on your back might be a little bit thicker.
Who's going to know? My picture, my skin doesn't look that thick. I've been on this for a long time.
No, and who's banging you from behind? That's going to matter. I mean, let's be honest here. They're not going to bang you from behind and say, "Oh, dude, the skin of your back is so thick." That's not how it's supposed to be, in a normal.
At that point in prison, does anyone really give a shit anymore?
Does really give a shit. Exactly. So the only downside for testosterone is that it aromatizes and might make your skin a little bit thicker over the other compounds. But regarding the safety and efficacy profile, it is still the best bang for your buck. I mean, we didn't put testosterone S tier for no reason. So it I've done bioidentical hormone cycles many, many years, right? Until I started experimenting a little bit more for content purposes. My blood work was almost impeccable on testosterone-only cycles. We're talking about an HDL of 50 and LDL of 110, and that's without ezetimibe or statins. Hematocrit didn't budge. The liver enzymes barely changed. And then you start experimenting with other stuff, and then your blood work skews and literally falls out of your arteries, trying to run away. It gives you a phlebotomy. That's how scared your blood work is. So I think leveraging the testosterone and the bioidentical hormone stuff for as long as possible, and then you close your cycle off with a bang and throw in the anadrol and the tren or whatever for a couple of weeks. Sure, and then you feel like a freak, but your body also hurts. From a joint perspective, like, oh man, I'm so strong now. I'm doing 50 or 80 kilo incline work, and then after a while, your body just kind of hurts, and then you need a break. And also from a blood work perspective. So I think that's the most sustainable option. But it's not sexy. It doesn't sell. Because you have to stay on test only for 4 to 6 months. And then you have 8 weeks of a honeymoon period with Trembolone in the picture. Whereas guys rather be on Trembolone for 6 months and then do a consultation about kidney failure. Dean, what do you think? Are you already fantasizing about your next off-season cycle? I see your gears
I'm thinking.
grinding.
I'm. You just see the numbers running through my head.
Yeah,
I think
600 tomatoes.
I think some bananas and pineapples, a bit of mango. I think what we sort of discussed, offline before was when Kurt brought that whole up about guys being risk averse, which is how we've sort of started the podcast. And I put my hand up and I was like, well, yeah, I'm probably to blame for some guys running 150 tests and, being a bit oh, do I need to push it? But that sort of low test approach stemmed from me sort of personally being a high aromatizer. So I know if I go way above 125, 200, 250, inevitably I have to use an aromatase inhibitor, albeit in a low dose. So now I've added in this other compound that I have to use to mitigate my genetics of high aromatase expression to try and keep that in a relative normal range so that I have mood stability from, the higher estrogen creates more serotonin, can feed into mood issues. And so for me personally, that just makes more sense that I know everything is steady at 125. So I'm just going to leverage in last year's contest prep, 300 Primo, 200 Nandrolone or whatever, or 200 bananas and 300 pineapples. That, I know that dose is steady. It fulfills biological need of bioidentical testosterone. And so personally, I don't need to go any higher than that with designing the rest of it around it. But that's not to say that it's like a set in stone rule. Yeah, be very risk averse with, you know, I'm taking a steroid cycle, and you ask, and it's like, well, I'm on 150 tests, and it's sort of, well, as your total testosterone probably upper 20s, bottom 30s, or in US terms, you know, maybe I think 850, 900. That it's, yeah, it's an optimal test level. But when we're talking about like peak dosages and serum levels, it's right probably at the bottom of the end.
Yeah.
That